I can't let you leave Thirsk.
I was afraid you might say that.
I'm going to stay here and check on the mead. A new batch of the Ashfire should be ready for bottling soon, unless the Rieklings used it for bathwater.
Red grass.
I brought your Scathe Craw.
Good red grass. Later we burn.
I'd be better off with some meat in my belly, but the air in Solstheim is almost as sweet.
Hey there, long time no see.
It's good to see you.
As you can probably tell, this is the longest video I've made on the channel to date, which is part of the reason why it's been a little over 4 months since my last upload.
It's been a long time.
And of course, just as I was closing in on the finished video, Bethesda had to shadow drop Oblivion Remastered. I haven't even downloaded it yet because this edit has occupied nearly all of my spare time, and even if I wanted to set time aside to play it and put this video out at a later date, I couldn't. My remaining SSD space is currently occupied by this video's files. I'm beyond excited to play the remaster and make some videos in Cyrodiil, but first things first. This is the second part of a series I'm doing on meads that were left out of the Elder Scrolls cookbook. After I made all of the official mead recipes, I wanted to take a crack at the brews that were left out, presumably due to their rarity and reduced quantities found in-game. We've already done the 1-of-1 Dragon's Breath mead from Dragon's Bridge, which you can check out after this video if that sounds interesting. We made it with smoked huajillo and orange blossom honeys, Kveik Voss yeast, orange calendula flowers, elderflowers, and some long pepper for a medieval-friendly spice. It's sweet, smoky, floral, and a little spicy. Today's mead is going to further amp up the smoke and spice with the only mead produced on Solstheim, Ashfire Mead. This mead is a bit of a unique one in that there are a handful of side quests that serve as prerequisites before you can actually help the brewer of Thirsk, Elmus, brew a batch of Ashfire Mead. When I say help, of course, I really just mean bring him an ingredient from the mainland that he pays a ludicrous sum for. Elder Scrolls games are notorious for their fetch quests, but I have hope that the Elder Scrolls 6 can be a little more in-depth with their brewing mechanics. I doubt it, but as a wise professor once said,
"A man can dream, though. A man can dream."
Anyways, those prerequisite side quests and their accompanying fetch quests inspired some of the ingredients I chose to include in the mead. Rather than just quickly brushing over them and jumping straight into the brewing process, I chose to explore them in greater detail like I did with the Velvet Lechance video last year. I didn't expect it to turn into what it did though. It sort of became my own personal low-budget movie of sorts that is rife with heart, betrayal, and vengeance. Of course, if that doesn't interest you and you want to just jump to the resulting recipe, I have included chapters for your convenience. But by virtue of you choosing to watch this video in the first place, I would wager you're an Elder Scrolls fan, and you'd be missing out if you skipped it. The Thirsk Massacre in particular was a visual that was stuck in my head for months as I wrote the script last year, and I hope you have as much fun watching it as I did making it. Of course, before we can brew the Ashfire Mead at Thirsk, we actually gotta get there. So let's set sail for Solstheim, fresh juniper berries in hand.
We'll cast off immediately. Well, here we are. Welcome to Raven Rock. Just be careful here. Things aren't what they used to be.
Welcome to Thirsk Mead Hall. A little history. This hall was founded in the Third Era by a small group of Solstheim Skald led by Hrothmund the Red. They decided to break away from their peaceful kin and lead a more traditional Nordic lifestyle in emulation of organizations like the Companions on the mainland, living for glory in battle and mead-swilling revelry. They sought a new location to settle and found Lake Fjölding after migrating some distance south. Construction began, and after roughly a month, the new mead hall was completed, which also served as a hunting lodge. I did take the liberty of cleaning up the mess the Rieklings left, and it's just about back to its former glory in the days of the Third Era in the Morrowind Blood Moon DLC. I have to admit, as many times as I've played this game, I think the research for this video might just be the first time I knew there was more lore to the Ashfire Mead found on the island. This is because to unlock the quests surrounding the beverage, you have to side with the Nords who were driven out of Thirsk by the Rieklings and retake the mead hall. But I have a hard time resisting the idea of having a crazy little blue guy following me around and throwing tiny spears at my foes. They're cute, in a sort of gross way. Okay, go away now. To get started with the quest, instead of going straight to Thirsk, I actually traveled down to the recently displaced Nords encampment on the shore of the Sea of Ghosts, known as Bujold's Retreat, where I overheard this argument between their leader, Bujold the Unworthy, and her husband, Kuvar.
It won't be that easy to get rid of the Rieklings, Kuvar.
I never said it would be, but either way, we have to try. Whether we succeed or not, it'll stir up some of the old blood in this crowd.
I'm not going to lead them to their deaths if they aren't ready.
Then train them. What are we doing here? We should either get used to staying here, or be preparing to retake the hall. You're having us do neither, and I can't stomach it.
But your stomach isn't my problem. We'll act when I say we do, and not before.
Well, you'd better say something. And soon.
Come to mock our shame, like the others?
What's going on here?
What's going on here is that we've been kicked out of our home. The Mead Hall, up there on the hill. Some Rieklings have taken it over.
How long have you been down here?
Longer than I would have liked.
Have you been exiled?
I wouldn't call it that. We've just got a bit of an infestation is all. Down here to catch our breath, and then we'll be back in the hall once I get the rest of these up to move.
An infestation of what?
Rieklings. You must have passed by the hall on your way down here. Well, it's been overrun. We're just out here temporarily, to regroup. Yes, this camp is small, but it's all we have left.
Don't judge this place. We could make home wherever we are.
They're a rather dejected lot, aimlessly wandering from task to task or simply sitting and doing nothing while they wait for something to happen. It would seem that Thirsk has a history of being decimated by the beasts of Solstheim. Around the time of its construction, the original group inadvertently awoke the Udafricta living in Lake Fjölding, which they pushed back after losing a great many warriors. Some say the Nerevarine helped them deal with it once and for all in Third Era 427, and went on to become the new leader of the Mead Hall, although 207 years later you can still find another unique creature also named Udafricta just across the Sea of Ghosts, in the abandoned Dawnstar Dark Brotherhood Sanctuary in 4th Era 201.
Chilly. You'll enjoy this. Not an original part of the sanctuary per se. Let's call it a forced addition. Forced by what? Oh, come and see! Oh, I slay me!
Whether this is the same Udafricta or an offspring of the original, I am unsure. Anyways, hanging around also means you can overhear a conversation with Bujold and their resident meadmaker, Elmus.
How are you holding up?
It's rough out here, but I'm getting by.
Not everyone was built for this kind of life. There's no shame in that.
I can handle it. Just wish there was more mead is all. Have you been by Thirsk? Have you seen... Is there any of the mead left? A new batch of the Ashfire should be ready for bottling soon, unless the Rieklings used it for bathwater.
You a warrior?
I wouldn't be at Thirsk if I wasn't. These days I focus a little more on the creature comforts of the hall, though. The food, the drink, the stories. It drives Kuvar mad, but someone has to do it or the place would be a little cold.
Are you the one who makes the mead?
I make it, I drink it, I share it with friends. Ha! Thirsk didn't always make its own mead. No, we used to get by on shipments from Skyrim. But those gold grubbers at the East Empire Company started charging more than their share for bringing it over. We still buy what we have to, but I make as much as I can.
Is there anything that would make being down here more bearable?
Well, the easy answer, of course. Mead! Actually, now that I think of it, I have been missing the Ashfire. It's a special brew that we make at Thirsk. If you could somehow get up there and grab a bottle, I'd be a long way towards forgetting how miserable it is down here. Farewell.
To help a fellow mead maker out, I made my way up the hill to Thirsk, where the Rieklings were non-hostile and just kind of milling about. They absolutely trashed the place, but there were a few bottles of Ashfire Mead strewn around the floor. Since they didn't immediately throw a spear at my head when I came in, I figured I should at least check in with their chief about why they're here in the first place, before just walking off with a few bottles of the Ashfire.
Why did you take over Thirsk?
Hot, fire, cold, dizzy drink, happy tribe.
Fair enough. Short, sweet, and to the point, little fellas. Also, surprisingly well-spoken. Love their affectionate name for mead.
And they like their dizzy drink, which is basically alcohol.
We all like our dizzy drink.
You do, don't you?
I'm going to crack a dizzy drink straight after this.
Honestly, they're not so different from the Nords. In a different Kalpa, perhaps they could have even been friends. Fun fact, it was once hypothesized that the Rieklings might be the descended remnants of the once noble Falmer Snow Elves before Skyrim came out and explored that fallen race in greater detail. I was curious as to how this lot learned to speak Tamrielic, so I inquired a little more before heading back to Bujold's retreat.
How did you learn to talk?
Chief, smart. Most Reikling, dumb, but Chief, smart. We, family, we strong, you stronger.
Are you saying you want my help?
Bilgemuck, run. Prize beast, run. Full tribe kill, chase away. Bilgemuck, fear. You bring, he follow you, yes.
Stop it. Bilgemuck is an animal of some kind, and you want it back?
Bilgemuck, prize beast, you find, he follow. Bilgemuck, love meat, give meat, he follow, you go.
Okay. Real quick, mind if I grab a couple bottles of dizzy drink on the way out?
Cold, dizzy drink, you, yes.
Yes.
Chief, happy, go, go.
Thanks.
So of course I brought Elmus some Ashfire to wet his whistle before going out to find Bilgemuck.
Are you gonna join us on the next hunt?
I hadn't planned on it. Do you need my help?
No, but you need to come on the hunt more than we need you on the hunt.
I found some Ashfire Mead.
Oh, that's the stuff, all right. You're a good friend to Thirsk, and to me. I thank you.
Now I could have just gotten straight to business and reclaimed the Mead Hall from the Rieklings, but then I wouldn't have had access to their next fetch quest, which is for an ingredient I'd like to incorporate into my recipe for the drink. So, before I chatted with Bujold and Kuvar, I needed to pick up the bristly old pig Bilgemuck and bring him back to Thirsk. And where did I find him but on the fabled Lake Fjölding?
Come on, boy. I got something for you.
Bilgemuck, follow you. Bilgemuck, no strength. Try keep stronger. You stay help more.
You want me to do something else?
Try keep missing red grass. Need for God speak dance. You bring red grass. We dance.
What is this red grass?
Here, like this. Go pray. 2 hands of red grass. Big friend of
I brought your Scathecraw.
Good, Redgrass. Later we burn. Now, final task. Then you tribe kill.
What do we need to do now?
Bad Nords say Thirsk bears live by water. Bother tribe kill. We fight. You strong. You help. No more bad Nords.
You want me to kill people?
Bad people. They come fight us. We fight back now.
I don't know about this. Because I really needed to brew that mead for this video, so I had to walk away from the Rieklings at this branch of the quest.
You know. We know. Come fight. We wait, but you come fight.
I was curious as to how a group of supposedly hardy Nords were so easily routed from their mead hall by a relatively disorganized group of goblinkin, so I trudged back down the hill to speak with Bujold the Unworthy to shed some light on the subject. How were Rieklings able to overpower you?
With tenacity and numbers. It didn't help that we'd grown a little too comfortable up there. Too much mead, too many stories, too few battles.
What if you had one extra warrior?
Are you offering to help? Some new blood should be enough to rouse these layabouts to actually fight again.
That sounds like fun.
Well, let's move then.
And now, the hard part. To continue our quest and help them prepare a new batch of Ashfire Mead, I had to help Bujold and her folk retake Thirsk from the Rieklings. I don't relish this, as I've grown rather affectionate of the little scamps. Figuratively speaking, of course, as they aren't Daedric in nature. However, in the pursuit of science/new and interesting meads, sacrifices must be made.
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
Hey, you lazy milk drinkers, get over here. I know you're all starting to settle in here and keep up the fat lives you've got used to up in the hall. But look here, this outsider has more fire than any of you. All I had to do was mention our little infestation, and he volunteered in a second. I don't want to have my spirit outstripped by some wanderer, so let's get up there and kill us some Rieklings.
Skyrim is a beautiful and harsh mistress, but her people cling to such a petty notion of honor. I shall write your name upon the tablet of absolute darkness.
The blood of deceit is nourishing. Bathe in your infamy.
I promise. I'm fine. The little guys really kicked everyone's butts, so I'm not exactly surprised they got kicked out so easily in the first place and needed an outsider's help to retake Thirsk. When the deed was done, there was one more order of business to take care of while the rest of the crew cleaned up the hall. The matter of leadership. Apparently, the leader of the hall is determined by communing with the spirit of Hrothmund. However, by virtue of their removal from the hall, Bujold needed to receive his blessing again to continue her leadership. Bujold asked me to go with her as a second to witness the blessing, so I did in the hopes that I could finally help Elmus brew a new batch of Ashfire Mead when we got back.
You seek my blessing for the leadership of Thirsk Hall?
I do. It is I, Bujold. You blessed me in the past. And now I've rid the Hall of Rieklings and returned it to its rightful owners.
And well it is that this has happened. But I have always watched, and know that it was your softness that led to your own exile. You allowed your fellow warriors to grow weak, while the dangers around you mounted.
Then, the leadership is not mine?
No, nor is there any among you fit to serve. For a band in the wilderness, it is better to have no leader than a poor one.
That was a little embarrassing.
How are you feeling about that?
Ashamed. But I guess that was the point. I need to return to Thirsk. No matter what Hrothmund says, we need a leader, and I'm still the best person for that.
You'll go against Hrothmund's wishes?
Look what's happened to us so far under his watchful eye. He gave his blessing to all the leaders who brought us to this point. Anyway, he's dead and we're alive. It's time to begin a new tradition for Thirsk, and I'm going to do that. All I need is for you to back me up. You don't even need to lie. Just don't tell anyone else what you heard here.
You can settle this matter 4-ish ways. First, you can either confront Bujold and fight to the death, or agree to leave with her and head back to Thirsk together. Either way, when you get back, Kuvar will ask you what happened at the Barrow. If you killed her, he will become the de facto leader of the Hall, but if you told him the truth, he will be cold to you and won't offer training. If you lie about killing her, he'll be neutral and keep the option open to train. If you spare her and tell the truth about what happened, he will exile her and be too broken up to train you. And if you spare her and lie to everyone for her, she will remain the leader and he will offer training still. I kinda hate that no matter what, you have to lie to keep the training option open, but regardless of which route you take, you can still help Elmus with his mead. Personally, I was still torn up about having to kill the Rieklings for her, so I wasn't about to let her leave Hrothmund's barrow and set off into the sunset.
I can't let you lead Thirsk.
I was afraid you might say that. Well, looks as though I'll have to prove my mettle against you now.
Of course, I still wanted to train with Kuvar, so I just avoided the question when I returned alone.
How do things go out there? Where is Bujold?
I don't know what happened to her.
Well, let's hope she makes it back soon. This lot doesn't have much patience with me.
Somehow they still found out she died, but didn't piece it together that I was the one who did it.
My wife died.
My sister died.
Things won't be the same without her.
Hilland might have, though, even if she won't say it to my face.
Go away. Leave me alone. I'm not looking for conversation. Get lost.
If you do choose to spare Bujold, she will ask Elmus about the mead's status.
Were you able to salvage any of the mead?
Most of the old brew is still good, but I had to get rid of some of the newer batches.
What did they do to it?
Just trust me, you don't want to drink it.
Anyways, with all that unpleasantness finally settled, let's go chat with our new friend Elmus about the state of his reclaimed brews.
I was able to salvage most of the latest batch of mead. The rest was fouled.
Do you plan to stick around here then?
Kuvar isn't enough to frighten me off. He makes a lot of noise, but at the end of the day, he wants what we all want. Peace and a warm drink.
How much mead is left?
Enough for now. But I'll either need to get some more barrels or start importing more if we're going to make it through next winter. Last thing you want is the mead to run out just as the fire dies.
How is the mead?
We lost most of the batches we had brewing before those things were here. One is just ready to take its turn though, and it's about time to add some of the flavorings. You can't find them on Solstheim, but if you find yourself back in Skyrim, I wouldn't mind you bringing some juniper berries. They add a different kind of sweetness. Tart. Makes the flavor more round.
Luckily, I already grabbed a fresh sprig of juniper berries before we set sail, so there's no need to trek all the way back to the mainland.
I got some juniper berries.
Oh, perfect. Just the right ripeness, too. Good work, friend. I'm glad you're here.
It is at this point that we can deviate from the questing and begin brewing a batch ourselves. The only concrete things we know about the Ashfire Mead are the name, and that it uses juniper berries from the mainland after a primary fermentation for a rounder flavor, tartness, and a different kind of sweetness. Not exactly the flavors I would immediately go to for juniper, but I digress. It's a video game. What? We also know that it uses other flavorings, perhaps even in the initial fermentation, since he says it's time to add some of them after its turn, is special to Thirsk and Solstheim, has a name that invokes smoke and spice, and is good cold, according to the late chieftain. Because juniper berries are the only ingredients he asks for from Skyrim proper, we'll need to look to the surrounding area for additional ingredients. There are a number of snowberry bushes in the colder areas surrounding Thirsk, so we'll take a note from the Elder Scrolls cookbook on defining the snowberry. In my video on the spiced wines of Skyrim, there is a snowberry cordial recipe that uses cranberries and rose hips. When I set out to brew this recipe, I originally viewed the combination of those two ingredients as a stand-in for the fictional snowberry. However, the snowberry sauce and the snowberry crostata in the cookbook don't use the rose hips, but instead incorporate the Nord spice blend, and the only other overlap between the two snowberry-oriented recipes is cinnamon. A case could be made for that combo being the fictional flavor, but the more likely answer is that they just meant for cranberries to be the snowberry. It's a real bummer, because I like the idea of combining flavors from our world to represent a fictional ingredient. Also, shout out to Wally Wallace 2184, who I had a conversation with about this very subject on the Spiced Wines of Skyrim video comment section. Anyways, the Nord spices will be added to this brew by a different ingredient, but at the time I hadn't quite come to the conclusion or realization about the snowberry combination when I was brewing this, so I did use the cranberry and rosehip combo to represent the snowberries, specifically making use of some dried unsweetened cranberries left from the Sujama video and adding them in the secondary fermentation with the juniper berries. Now that we've got the berry situation sorted, let's consider the first part of the name, the ash ingredients. We could, of course, rely on the trusty old toasted wood spiral, but I also wanted to look to Solstheim's flora for inspiration, considering its now ashen terraformation after the eruption of Red Mountain just under 200 years ago. Two nearby ingredients fit the bill: ash creep clusters and ash yams. The Elder Scrolls Cookbook Volume 1 has a recipe for baked ash yams, using sweet potatoes and a spiced butter that uses this book's blend of Nord spices. To avoid putting butter in our brew though, and to imbue it with a little more smokiness, I chopped up a yam, sprinkled it with Nord spices, and smoked it low and slow with some hickory wood for around an hour rather than baking it with the spiced butter. The ash creep clusters look a little bit like ginger root to me, so I chopped one up and threw it in with our ash yams for about 30 minutes. Once they were adequately smoky, I threw them in with the berries on the secondary fermentation for conditioning. The ginger will help with the fire portion of the name, courtesy of the phenolic phytochemical compound gingerol, but I think we can do even better. So to finish the fire aspect of the brew, I took some creative liberties. As evidenced by the chieftain's request earlier, Skaithcraw is not difficult to come by. Originally from Morrowind, Skaithcraw is the soft inner flesh of long, tough, reddish grasses growing in the thermal ash regions of the Ashlands, Molag Amur, and Red Mountain. It has since been transplanted to Solstheim since the eruption of Red Mountain in the 5th year of the 4th era, and Solstheim's inadvertent terraforming into a landscape that mirrors Morrowind's, and as such is found in the southern, less snowy, more ashy regions of the island. The plant itself actually looks like an aloe vera plant, albeit with a deeper mahogany hue. I imagine it to also taste a little spicy, given its rather detrimental alchemical properties, although that is admittedly a wholesale confabulation on my part to inject my desire for the Ashfire Mead to have an additional spicy kick. To achieve this, I chopped up, skinned, and rinsed some culinary aloe before I added it to the primary fermentation to represent the flesh of the Skaithcraw. To represent the exterior of the Skaithcraw and to bring some heat, I added an ingredient that I have unintentionally used in a number of recent videos on this channel: chile de arbol peppers. I have several videos in the works at any given time, and these were all filmed months apart, with the Blood Mead being brewed in October of 2023, this Ashfire Mead being brewed in March of 2024, and the Velvet Lachance video having been filmed over a year after the Blood Mead in October of 2024. I am still a little mind blown that they all lined up to release in such close proximity, but hey, I guess we just had a spicy era on this channel. Still, I'll try to avoid letting something like this happen in the future, although I can think of one work in progress that will have this pepper in it too.
You fool.
Anyways, the aloe and chile de arbol coalesce into something that looks akin to the Skaithcraw, so despite my unintentionally frequent use of chile de arbol, I'd still say we've hit the jackpot on this one from a visual perspective. Lastly, for the honey we'll use, I still had some smoked Huajillo honey from the Dragon's Breath Mead recipe, but in anticipation preparation of this video, I also smoked a pound of buckwheat honey. It's an extremely dark honey that bears a striking resemblance of flavor and appearance to molasses, and I like to think it's what honey harvested on Solstheim would look like. I used the remainder of both smoked honeys, and for my yeast I stuck with the Kvekvoss strain we used for the Dragon's Breath. Honestly, it's probably my favorite yeast to use in these medieval-inspired videos for a lore accuracy take and to have something not quite so alcohol high and dry. However, given the Dragon's Breath mead's particular knack for choking, I was a little more generous with the amount of yeast I used. I added some Fermate K early on to hopefully sustain the fermentation and give the little yeasty boys the extra nutrients they needed, and brewed at the higher end of its optimal temperature range for primary fermentation. To do this, I immersed the carboy in a pot and used a sous vide to keep the surrounding water around 100 to 102 Fahrenheit for 3 straight days to absolutely rip through the primary fermentation. Thirsk Mead Hall gets toasty, I guess. Once that was done, to recap, my Ashfire Mead recipe had a primary fermentation with around 340 grams of smoked Huahio honey, a pound of smoked buckwheat honey, 9 cups of water, Kvekvoss yeast, a toasted wood spiral, and Skaithcraw, represented as aloe and peppers. Because of the Kvek's lower alcohol tolerance, I went with a weaker ratio of honey to water. It would also make sense for the Nords of Thirsk to try to stretch their meads further given the difficulty of getting necessary ingredients out here on Solstheim's frontier. The aroma from the primary fermentation on this one was very strongly aloe-centric, not exactly soapy, but still in that realm with a fresh vegetal and citrus spike and a capsaicin kick increasingly emanating as the days progressed. It was then time to re-rack and remove the solids of the previous ingredients after 3 days to prevent over-extraction and add the ash yams, aka hickory smoked yam with Nord spices, ash creep cluster, aka smoked ginger root, snowberries, represented by dried cranberries and rose hips, even though you could get away with not using the rose hips and still be lore accurate if the Elder Scrolls cookbook is to be believed, and of course the requested fresh juniper berries for our boy Elmus. I actually sampled a fresh juniper berry when the sprigs arrived in the mail, and they actually are mildly sweet compared to their dried counterparts found in bulk stores, so Elmus might actually be onto something. I gently ground them up to ensure all that goodness got into the final brew, and then added it to the carboy along with the hickory smoked yam with Nord spices, ginger, dried cranberries, and dried rose hips. I let them condition for 2 weeks and then strained out the secondary spice additions and re-racked back into a smaller carboy to let the sediment settle. Now I don't think I have a video of this, or if I do, I can't find it. If I do find it, I'll put it here, but at one point as this one was settling out, it literally looked like a 3-tiered chocolate pudding. The layers were that distinct. By now though, that is no longer the case. I did move it from container to container until the sediment was more or less taken care of, but it is still so much darker than your traditional mead. It is like so brown it is almost black. I definitely tasted it along the way to check in, and I already have some thoughts to share before we even crack it open. First and most specifically, I went way too hard on the chili de arbol peppers because this puppy is hot. However, on a broader level, I think I was a little too overzealous in my pursuit to use ingredients from Solstheim in general because there are just too many flavors going on in this glass to let any one shine through or work in tandem with another to create a more interesting gestalt. It's really close to being interesting, but the other aspect of the Skaithcraw I came up with, the aloe, is just so unlike the earthy, richer flavors of the other ingredients that it pulls it in a perpendicular direction. So now that you have my tasting notes from along the way, let's see where it's at now, almost a year out from brewing.
So, what do you think, my dear? I can smell the smoke.
It has mellowed a little bit in terms of the aggressiveness of the aloe on the nose. It still is more citrusy on the nose, but you know the spice is there, and actually the Nord spices and the yams are coming through on the nose a lot too, which I actually appreciate. The ginger and the aloe are actually also interacting on the nose fairly well, but it is very much like a smell that can't decide if it wants to be summer or fall. So of course, I'm gonna upload this video in the winter. Ooh, I got a little bit of that cranberry tartness on the nose too. So I can pick out generally all of the ingredients that I used, but I do wish it was more juniper on the nose in the way that Vilod's mead is. It's time for a taste.
All it takes is one taste, and the effects are quite immediate.
Not bad.
Okay, with some time, this has coalesced a little bit more than in my notes from along the way. So maybe it did just need a little bit of time to like marry all the flavors together in the bottle and let things that were more aggressive calm down. The spice is a lot more reduced than it was before, but I kid you not, it hurt for a little while. I used more chili de arbol in this brew than I did in the blood mead, and I think it was a smaller batch, although they might have been about the same size.
Let's see where this leads.
In a way, it is very Solstheim coated. There is that ashy smokiness, and yet there are more tropical flavors coming through from the aloe interacting with things like the cranberry. Unfortunately, the juniper doesn't show up until the finish, but it does leave you with this clean pininess that kind of interacts with the ginger and chili de arbol spices in a fun and interesting way. Now, to give us something to compare to, I do have some of the Control Mead that I brewed at the same time when I was also brewing the Dragon's Breath Mead. So this is just a more neutral version of both this and the Dragon's Breath.
How much do you know about the brewing of mead?
Simply using a raw Colorado honey from Costco, the Quebec yeast, nutrients, etc., and no actual flavor additives, so it's as basic as a mead can be, and since it was brewed at the same time, it does serve as a very nice comparison to what this would have been without all the extra stuff. And on the nose, that is tropical heaven. There's like passion fruit and candied citrus and a little bit of guava. It's like the Quebec yeast is very unorthodox and introduces flavors that you might not associate with a hardy Nordic people, but it is very much a fun and tasty yeast strain that comes from a Nordic culture.
Just delicious.
And on the body, light, friendly, fruity, pleasant, sweet. It's good. So I think we could probably come to something that might be a more palatable version of the Ashfire Mead by blending these two. So I've prepared for us 5 different blends in different ratios of the Control and the Ashfire to taste and to kind of settle on where the ingredients could have been dialed around to come up with something a little more akin to what I would prefer. So okay, here's our spread of Ashfire and Control Meads blended from the plain Ashfire to the plain Control. As you can see, the Ashfire does lend a lot of color because at the lower end of the gradient, it still looks more like these ones than it does the Control. To break down the ratios, I did this by weight. This one is 3/4 Ashfire, 1/4 Control. This one is 2/3 Ashfire and 1/3 Control. This is half and half. This is 1/3 Ashfire, 2/3 Control, and this is 1/4 Ashfire and 3/4 Control. And this is obviously the plain Control. To set my palate a little, I'm gonna go back to both the Control and the plain one just to get me in the headspace.
I'm a woman of refined yet simple tastes.
The plain Control, again, very much a spring and summer mead, whereas the Ashfire is almost like Thanksgiving in a glass, but plus a little bit of tropical elements to throw you off. So, working our way down from most Ashfire-y to least, I'm going to taste them down the line, and then I'll give you my thoughts at the end instead of, deliberating as I go.
You've brewed a truly vile poison there. I pity the beast that tastes that.
You get used to it after a while. Kind of smells like the hot springs out in the tundra.
That's disgusting.
I'd like the fresh air better, but this isn't so bad.
It sounds awful.
It's not that bad.
Whatever you say.
So a strange thing is happening here. As I taste it down the line, the Control dilutes certain flavors quicker than others. Mostly the one that actually seems even stronger on this end of the spectrum than this one oddly enough, is the spice. This one with the least amount of Ashfire is oddly the most spicy to my tongue right now, but it is also markedly more sweet because I'll look back at my recipe, but I'm pretty sure I made the Control on the sweeter end of the spectrum, so I guess that would make sense given that the Ashfire was made with the lower ratio to stretch the mead, because that's probably what they would do on Solstheim, but the spice is still, it's weird to me how much I perceive this one spicier.
Spices? I have no idea what you're talking about.
Maybe it's just because I tasted them in that order. We're gonna do that again in the opposite direction.
So, do you get that weird taste in your mouth too? What is that?
Almost a hint of chocolatiness on that one.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Master. It's all because of your brilliant teaching.
Are you done? Did you just come here to make speeches, or can we get down to business? We need all the mead we can drink.
Wait, something's wrong.
Something out there is piss-drunk mad at us. I need another drink.
Something smells foul.
That plain Ashfire at the end is just brisk. And I do think that showcases to me that perhaps it's because I was just tasting a lot of spicy ones before getting to a not so spicy one, because again, now I do feel like the spice has built in my throat. So I'm gonna try just refreshing with water in between, and I'm not gonna do that on screen because my water cup is not lore accurate. I don't think they have blue plastic cups in Solstheim.
What?
This mead tastes like water.
Ugh, the wine in Skyrim tastes like urine compared to the fine vintages we had in Valenwood.
Back off, or by the 8 I'll cleave that arrogant head from its shoulders. Playing nursemaid to a bunch of bees and drinking mead all day beats dying on some battlefield.
Okay, I think I've settled on things. So, the problem on this end of the spectrum is it's too sweet. I know he said that the juniper berries add a different type of sweetness, but that is not the sweetness that's being delivered here. It's just honeysuckle citrus sweetness that I don't think is fully in line with the rest of this, and the juniper berry gets diluted a lot more on this side of the spectrum. You don't even get that piney note at the end on this side. Conversely, on this side, this is thin and painful. This gets a little bit of that sweetness and maybe brings out a little bit more of the ginger, but I think this one, 1/3 Control Mead and 2/3 Ashfire, is a little bit more yam forward and has just the right amount of sweetness to level it up, and the spice is reduced versus the plain Ashfire. It's enough Control Mead to round it a little bit, so it's a little chewier and definitely provides more of a gestalt to the other flavors, lets them work together nicely. The half and half is also good and works well, but you lose a little bit of the smokiness that is kind of the point of this whole thing. So I think if I had to, I would either do 2/3 Ashfire, 1/3 Control as like an actual ideal Ashfire flavor for this recipe, or a blend between the 2/3 and the 1/2, whatever that would be, 7/12. In fact, we'll blend them together now, and we'll see if I'm right.
Not bad. Reminds me of when I first started brewing.
Yeah, I'd say I'm right. I think that 7/12 of the Ashfire and 5/12 of the Control provide the ideal amount of smoke and spice while preserving the juniper flavor, and actually probably help bringing out the juniper flavor from the Ashfire by tamping down some of the more rich Thanksgiving-y flavors. This recipe did taste a lot more Thanksgiving and Christmas than anything else. I originally meant to have this out around Thanksgiving because I knew it was kind of a Thanksgiving flavor. But here we are. I thought about delaying it till next Thanksgiving, but I wasn't gonna do that to you guys. Just revisit this video after Halloween next year, because I think that's gonna be ideal. I'll be sure to post about it on Instagram to remind everybody to, brush up on your Ashfire mead. And honestly, this has inspired me, and I may brew a new batch, taking into consideration some of the lessons learned on this one, perhaps adjusting our Skaithcraw. As interesting as the aloe was, I'm also not 100% sure that it was the right call. It did add, weirdly, two aspects that seem contradictory. First, kind of this drying sensation on your tongue, and then second, a gelatinous nature to the mead itself. I think that the aloe, and possibly the starch from the sweet potato, but I blame the aloe for some gumminess that made it create a 3-layer visual that I wish I could show you, but I really don't think I have that video. So, this is my first pass at the Ashfire Mead, but it may not be my last. Will I have it out this Thanksgiving? Probably not, but perhaps in 2026. We may come back to this particular recipe and have a video for you then, unless I get really ambitious this year and somehow figure out how to make videos faster than I currently do. I apologize for that, by the way. I do think that the buckwheat honey, though, is very fun. I do want to find a method of cold smoking that provides an even more concentrated smoke flavor, because it's here, but it's not like Isla Scotch punch you in your face type smoke. It's just sort of, oh yeah, there's a campfire next door yesterday kind of smoke, which I don't think is quite how Solstheim would smell. For a first rendition of the Ashfire Mead, though, I do think it's good, with the caveat that we should have dialed back some of the ingredients a fair amount.
Have you tried any of the mead I brought out of storage? It still tastes all right to me, but...
There are more important things than mead, Elmus.
I know, I wanted...
I'm sorry. The mead, it is good.
You like it?
Don't push, son.
This recipe was a little more involved than the Dragon's Breath mead we made in the previous installment of this series, but there were also a lot more supplementary quests that helped inform potential ingredients for the brewing of Ashfire Mead. I think the creative liberties taken nailed the lore friendliness with this one, and it tastes very much like you'd expect given the name and Kuvar's reaction when being asked by Elmus how it tastes. Speaking of Kuvar, there were a lot of dialogue moments I cut for time from this video, including one where I'm 99% sure they accidentally gave the opposite lines to the voice actors.
So, what do you plan on doing?
What do you mean?
We're not going to be lounging around in a hall anymore, so you'll have to be a little more useful. Can't make mead down here.
I hadn't really thought of it. I'm still hoping we can go home.
This is home now, boy. Start living.
That story was preposterous. Stephen Hawking in a pizzeria. This thing isn't worth the gold it's made of.
Given that Elmus is the homely mead maker and Kuvar is the one looking to reclaim his Nordic hardiness in all his other dialogue, those lines are definitely backwards. The other cut conversations inform Bujold's complicated relationships with both her husband and her sister, showcasing her struggle with her failure as a leader and her tendency to lash out and blame others for said failures instead of taking accountability and acting to right the course. Also, the irony is not lost on me of my own choice to condemn Bujold for denying Hrothmund's code and then immediately turning around and assisting their mead maker with a cozy little brew. They did, of course, reach this point by virtue of having too much mead, too many stories, too few battles, a state that Elmus is more than happy to maintain.
The food, the drink, the stories.
What can I say? My motivations are more aligned with avenging the Rieklings than upholding a dead warrior's virtues. I'd still prefer the end state of the branch where you become the chieftain of the Rieklings at Thirsk over siding with the Nords for most playthroughs, but we had to do what we had to do to make the mead for this video. I do think that this video is an outlier. As fun as the extensive questing section was to conceive, shoot, and edit, it was the main pain point in the editing process timeline, which I didn't fully realize until I was deep in the editing swamp, and I do want to get more videos out quicker. I've got some ideas on that front, some of which involve the Oblivion Remaster and more content on the second channel, which has largely been reserved for streams and gaming content, but I think it would be fun to have Elder Scrolls lore-focused videos over there as well. If you like these videos, I think you'll find that channel will supplement your enjoyment even further. Anyways, back to me at Thirsk to give you a final breakdown of the mead and a look at in-progress, future mead-oriented content on this channel.
The molasses-esque richness from the buckwheat honey and ash yams pairs extremely well with the layered smokiness and multifaceted spice, courtesy of the ash creep clusters and Scathecraw. And the snowberries paired with the fresh juniper berries certainly gives it a different type of sweetness that is both tart and an overall flavor that could be described as more round, particularly when blended with the Control here. It is quite the eclectic and spicy holiday brew. Lastly, Elmus's statement that they supplement with meads from the mainland has been proven true. Now that the mess is cleaned up, it seems they were high spenders, with ample bottles of Blackbriar Reserve found in the hall. Perhaps we should consider that recipe next in our series on meads found in Skyrim. Once it's out, you'll be able to tap here to watch that video, or in the meantime, the original Blackbriar Mead recipe video I made, here to subscribe to the gaming channel, here to subscribe to this channel, or here to watch the previous video of this series where we brewed the Dragon's Breath Mead. Cheers. They can't know I let some of you live.
Hello? Who's there?